Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this day two. Really, it's a 3-day National Signing Day party. Everybody is just running around with their hair on fire. We're going to start off Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports over in Athens, covering Georgia. They're sitting at 1 or 2, depending on the rating service. They'll end up number 1. Golly, they lose a 5-star Dylan Raiola to Nebraska, and they get KJ Bolden. Life is great, but and again, it's like the playoff committee. Your teams were Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Texas. That should have been Georgia. Should have been in there. So yeah, that's why they recruited so well. So we'll talk about that. Gary Harris, Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9 joins us in segment number 2. Hour number 2, we'll have the ADs. John Hartwell from ULM will join us, and Matt Dean, the coach from Rhodes College, will be on here as well. We'll talk about what's going on. I know he's talked to Tyler out at Oregon, who's on Dan Lanning's staff, see what's going on out there. We do this 6 days a week, 25 shows a month, over 300 times a year. So let's get started. Jordan, yesterday, kind of a wild day. Were you on campus? Did they have like a place for everybody to come hang out? You're not really hanging out. You got your laptop and everything going, but another exciting day. And I'm sure the coaches said they love everything and everybody that they got. But in your opinion, did Georgia fill all the needs they had, if they had any?
Well, first, no, there was no hospitality in having an office or a media room, anything like that. I think we were all kind of working from home, which no complaints there. Just kind of another normal day until we got to talk to Kirby in the evening. Yeah, I mean, it was a home run, probably grand slam for Georgia. They had 27 commits coming into Wednesday. They lined up signing all 27 of those guys and did it by about noon. There was kind of no drama when it came to the guys who were still committed. Obviously, we mentioned losing Dylan Raiola a few days ago, so no surprise there when he signed with Nebraska. And then the watch was on for KJ Bolden, and credit to Benjamin Wolk, who covers recruiting for us over at Dogs 24/7. He had put on our board that there was a lot of smoke these last few days that they might be able to flip the 5-star safety from Florida State. He was Ben was there when the commitment happened at Buford, and he winds up choosing Georgia. So yeah, I mean, when you looked at this team, there was a few positions you knew that they really had a lot of need at. You look at the 24 class, offensive line, they signed 6 guys. I think they averaged like 6.5. I can't remember how many pounds, but massive guys that they've signed. I think they signed 6 offensive linemen. Got a lot of help on defensive line, signed 3 running backs, which I think was really big. Definitely a very successful signing day for Georgia. It was going to be whether they got KJ Bolden or not. I think they still had a pretty good shot at having the number 1 class with or without him. But then you get him. That's the cherry on top, getting the country's top safety.
Yeah, and Florida State had remember a couple of years ago, they had Travis Hunter out of Sewanee. Collins Hill committed, the number 1 player in the country. And on National Signing Day, he ends up at Jackson State. And then KJ Bolden, maybe they shouldn't recruit north of Atlanta defensive backs because they can't hold them. But they still had a hell of a class. Looking at it, Dylan Raiola, I think his decision, don't you, was Carson Beck's coming back. He just didn't want to wait. I mean, he's been to 3 high schools in 3 years. Kids like that always make me a little shaky. I don't care how many stars they have.
I mean, I think that was definitely a big piece of it, was that, there was the thought that Carson could be one and done as a starter. And then if that were the case, there's probably a good chance that Dylan Raiola comes to Georgia and starts next year. Now, they could have decided to go in the portal, and if they would have done that, I'm not sure, what would have happened with Raiola. But I think that was a piece of it. I think you look at, if you say, okay, he's not going to Georgia, Nebraska is the spot that makes the most sense. His dad played there, was actually the first player to win the Remington Trophy as the top center in the country, Dominic Raiola. And his uncle, Donovan Raiola, is the offensive line coach right now at Nebraska, just signed an extension a couple weeks ago. So I understand, how that sort of played out. I don't think that Georgia necessarily expected that to happen and for it to kind of fall together like it did. And, I think Georgia would have very gladly, been able to sign Dylan Raiola. But if you show Georgia, how this play out and say, all right, you're not getting one of the top quarterbacks in the country, but you get to hold on to Ryan Puglisi, who's a 4-star, who they like a whole lot. Instead, we're going to get you KJ Bolden instead. I think Georgia would take that consolation prize. Again, they would very, very glad to take Dylan Raiola. I think some people, well, I'm glad he's not coming. Like, well, that's sort of you just being mad he's not coming.
Yeah.
But still, for them to end up with what they had, I think they're pretty pleased with how this came together.
Well, they've got to. And he apparently is a really good quarterback. And I think Buford went out in the semifinals and the playoffs. And, here's a comment. I like Shoney Buford still swears they don't recruit. I mean, I've been watching this high school recruiting going on in Memphis for a long, long time. And some schools have stopped doing it. I mean, it has its pluses and minuses, but Buford put $50 million into their facilities. And I was over in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago for a week. Just the high school football in that area, it's unbelievable. And it used to be South Georgia was the state, but Georgia signed 9 or 10 in-state kids this year.
That sounds right. I'd have to look at the numbers again. I did want to say on Buford, at least they're up in the classifications. When I was in high school, they were like 3A. And Fannin County, which is north of where I grew up, I mean, they were in the same region as Buford, which was just about the meanest thing I've ever seen. But Kirby talked a little bit about signing guys in state, and he's like, we'd love to be able to just stay in state, and that's all we get. And, you'd be in decent shape if you did that. But, you have to sort of understand your needs, and that you have to understand that some years, the state of Georgia, those top prospects don't necessarily fill your need. So, they did a very good job and say they got KJ. I think KJ was like the number 3 player in the state of Georgia. They missed on a few people. Sammy Browne, probably the most notable linebacker going to Clemson. But, did a very good job. I mean, Georgia's at the point where they can pick guys in state. They can, for the most part, pick what they want. They're not going to get everybody because nobody does. But then they go out, and as we've talked about at length, go to California, go to Texas. This year they went to New Jersey. I think they got a few guys from New Jersey. Going up in the Northeast, getting guys. Going to Illinois to get an offensive lineman. I mean, it is a national recruiting machine right now, and it helps that your home state is Georgia, where more years than not going to be really, really elite talent basically in your backyard. But they can go into pretty much every state on the map and go get what they want.
Yet, looking at, I don't know how the NIL contracts read, but most of the Georgia players are going to play in the Orange Bowl against Florida State. I mean, they're going through practice right now. Are there any notable names, exceptions? I mean, am I wrong?
To date, we have not heard of anyone who has opted out. There definitely has not been any public announcements of it, and I behind the scenes haven't heard of anyone who's opted out. I think a lot of these guys want to end this thing on a high note, and I understand why they have that attitude. They're still. It was funny the day after the playoff was announced. The Orange Bowl comes together. There's a press conference, and somebody asked Kirby, "Hey, are you guys sort of understanding y'all are playing a Florida State team that it feels like it got left out, kind of like a mess of the hornet's nest." And he was like, "Hey, we feel like we got left out too. We feel like we had a pretty strong argument to make." I think there's a piece of that. And we talked to a few players last night after we talked to Kirby, and he talked about, some of those players talked about that they want to send out these seniors with a win. I think they might be one of the winningest classes if they win this game, and they've got a bowl streak right now that's going on pretty long. I think it might be like 6 bowl wins in a row when you consider the playoffs and some of those semifinal games.
Yeah.
But they want to end this thing the right way, end it to the victory. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of these guys are still hanging around and trying to get Georgia to end the year at 13-1.
Well, that's exactly, I think you're around the program and these players every day. The average fan thinks these guys are all mad. Sure, initially within the 24 hours after the announcement was made, but they're competitors. They didn't just start playing football. And that's what gets me is that all these people think that the players are not going to care. Remember the talk about the boycott. There was going to be a boycott of the players. They weren't going to go to the bowl game from Florida State. That's a bunch of nonsense. These guys are competitors. And you know what? The coach has a lot more power than people think too, because these kids realize, don't they, that when the NFL people come, they spend a lot of time talking to their position coaches, the head coaches, and a lot of people. And they know Kirby Smart has a lot of power. And if he says the kid's lazy and a sorry ass kid, what did Nick Saban say? There's two conversations. You have the and conversation about, Jordan Hill is one of the best kids I've ever coached. He comes from a great family in North Georgia. He's volunteer in the community. He's active with his church. He holds the door open for ladies. He's a yes or no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But he's just he doesn't like practice. You don't want to have that conversation. That's what people don't get. And you kind of open our eyes for people that are, frankly, I'm so sick of the cynicism of people because they think they know everything. We don't. You do a lot more than we do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a situation where guys sort of understand. I don't think there's necessarily a pressure, but I think a lot of these guys, why we haven't seen these opt-outs, is they truly have bought into the pitch and the way that Kirby Smart looks at running this program. I mean, they take it seriously, and I know that a game like the Orange Bowl, when it's not a playoff game, doesn't still have the luster or the allure that it used to have. You think about you're going to the Orange Bowl, man, that's a big bowl game. But I do think that they care, and I think too you have to kind of consider that the opponent. Florida State is undefeated, just like Georgia. Florida State's got a pretty good case to be in the college football playoff too. So I think there's a piece of that. Now, again, we may see a few guys not play. There's been some banged up guys that I could see. Maybe they make the trip, but maybe they don't play, and that's understandable. Guys that are have been playing through injury, just trying to not overdo it before they either get ready for next year or if they go into the draft. But I think this is a team that just has remained bought in. I don't think this is a team that said it was bought in and, we're not playing for a championship now, so, we're not going to deal with it. We don't care. I think these guys really mean, and I think they understood what they were signing up for when they came to Georgia. And it's the reason why a lot of these guys are still getting ready for this bowl
game. I wish people would, we don't have a chance to see practice every day. The media barely get to see them stretch. That's it. But you forget these guys have been there, some of them 3 or 4 years, and because of the virus, 6 or 7. So they've gotten to be very close, not just to the coaching staff, but people there in town in Athens. They're business owners that know them, and they may have worked for them or whatever, and they know if they listen, talking to their parents or coaches, hey man, 5, 10, 20 years from now, you're going to come back to Athens, maybe after a long pro career in the NFL or whatever. People are going to remember what you did when you were here and how you left this place. I promise you, I try to tell people that you can't just, there are 2 kinds of people in the world. There's takers, just gimme, and there's investors. And what I see with Kirby Smart, and I know there's a lot of cynics out there, that guy is so into Georgia and his players feed off of that. And he doesn't have people on the staff that are not invested in Georgia. They will not fit that model, I don't think.
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And I think even with those players, to the point you were just making, and I think about last night, we were talking to Ernest Green, who's a starting left tackle. And again, kind of talking about the motivation for this game. He said, I'm looking at guys like Cedric Van Pran and Marcus Rosemary, Jack Saint, some of those seniors, some of those guys that have been around for a while. And, I think about what they did for me and everything that they helped me. And, I want to help them get one more win before they leave. And I think Georgia does a very good job. And look, you're going to have guys that get in trouble. We know from that off season, all the speed and arrests, things like that. Like there's when you got that many guys and a lot of young guys, off on them for the first time, there's going to be guys get in trouble. But I do think that they take character seriously, and when they're recruiting these guys and getting team guys and getting guys that will fit their program, I think that that's something Georgia's done a pretty good job of year after year. And, I think it shows up. I think it shows up to a point where you look at the portal. I think Georgia's had about 16 guys, maybe a few more, including walk on, go in the portal. But it's not a situation where we're looking at this like, hey, this might be like a 2A team in Alabama. They might have guys playing both ways because all the guys leaving. I mean, they're still in good shape. And Kirby talked about that. I thought it was pretty interesting about the portal, losing guys. And, he said, that's on the whole, the portal is a good thing. It's when you see guys leave after a year that's a little more concerning, to see guys leave and try to start elsewhere. Kirby was definitely behind, allowing guys that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, I think that they've done a very good job putting this roster together. You got guys who want to be in this moment. They would rather be playing for a championship. That's, I don't think anyone would say otherwise. But they're going to try to end this thing the right way and represent Georgia well and try to go get one more win.
You know what happens is a lot of unsuccessful people in miserable lives of their own project that onto these kids. And I'm on the air. I've got to be objective and fair, and I am anyway. But you got to give credit where it's due. And for people to sit there and think that if they're not playing for the national championship, they don't care, they're out of their minds. They obviously never played sports in their lives, or they were never on a team that did anything. And so they just, again, it's like when Coach Dye was asked about Harvey Updike. He said, it was asked on that documentary, is he typical of Alabama fans? He goes, no, he's just typical of somebody with a miserable life. And that's just what it is. But you look at Mike Bobo, you look at Will Muschamp, look at Showman. Those guys are totally invested in Georgia. Matt Luke did a good job in those 2 years as the offensive line coach. He's out now, but Dell McGee, I remember him from Columbus. He went to Baker. He had a hell of a program he built at Carver. I don't know why he's not on the staff at Auburn, but I mean, maybe one day he'll come back. But Jordan, you've got a unique perspective. I mean, you covered Auburn for 6.5 years. You're covering Georgia now. Just kind of looking back across the Chattahoochee and Lee County, did you see anything that made you excited if you were cut? Because I know when you were at Auburn, the guy you said came over from Auburn, I said, well, he hadn't had to recover recruiting for about the last 3 years, but because they weren't doing it. It's different now, isn't it? I mean, but Auburn and Alabama, you know how many players the two of them got out of Georgia yesterday combined? 2. That blows my mind.
Definitely. And it's funny with Auburn. I think I've probably told this before. My dad, huge Georgia fan, and especially when I covered Auburn, he would text at the week of that game and be like, Auburn's got 27 kids from the state of Georgia. And he'd be so mad. I'd be like, Dad, Georgia can't sign every single guy. But that does surprise me, that Auburn didn't sign more guys from Georgia. But just, from the outside looking in at Auburn, I didn't totally follow everything they did. But I will say it's just very obvious the upgrades they made at wide receiver were humongous. And, getting guys like Cam Coleman, who I've seen a decent bit, from covering Central Phoenix City, I kind of still keep up with what they're doing. And Cam is really, really good. Perry Thompson, there's a lot of rumors he was going to flip to Alabama. He just kind of quietly signed with Auburn. No big to do, no fireworks for that. Some of the other guys they've got, and still trying to get Ryan Williams, that guy that just reclassified to 2024. I mean, I think that there are some Auburn fans from what I've seen, that are a little bit, wary of them saying we're going to run it back with Peyton Thorne and just upgrade the guys around him. And I can understand that. I mean, he had some kind of tough games, but I think, Rob, people don't take account of their receivers were not very good this year. I mean, besides Rivaldo Fairweather, I mean, I do not think they had SEC caliber receivers, tight ends as pass catchers. Those freshmen are going to take a little bit of time to grow and learn, but understand why they're taking the approach they are, keeping Peyton Thorne and trying to upgrade the guys around them, because they've got some very, very promising receivers coming in.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Georgia. It's incredible the talent that Georgia has stockpiled. There are five-star recruits that when they signed with Georgia, they were 5 stars in the portal leaving Georgia. 8 4-stars and 3 3-stars. Jordan, if that were a recruiting class being signed by a school, that would be one of the top, 2 or 3 in the country by the rating services. And yet Georgia goes out and gets another #1 recruiting class. It ain't luck, is it?
No, and I think I always think about when Kirby was hired. I asked him sort of about eh, what, how hands on are you wanting to be with the defense, and he said, "I'm gonna be hands on with the whole program," and
Yeah.
that's basically been the story of his time in Athens, and they take recruiting super seriously. I think he really learned a ton from working with Nick Saban and understanding what it takes. And, you know, I think about when Nick was hired, there was a story of him talking to the AD at Alabama and said, I'm going to paraphrase because he swore, but
Yeah.
he said, you hired a horse crap coach, but you hired a hell of a recruiter. And that's the secret to why Nick's been so good. And he's a better coach than he let on in that moment.
Yeah.
But it's all about talent acquisition, and Kirby's known how to do it, and he's done it well every single year. If I went back and looked, his first class aside, because he took over in December, and even that class finished like 8th in the country. I don't know that he's finished outside the top 5 of the class, according to 24/7 Sports. So, he understands it. They put the work in. I don't know how they find that many hours in the day, but the results speak for themselves, and it's a big reason why Georgia is where it is in the landscape of college football.
Yeah. This matchup with Florida State, I think when by the time they get down there, start the bowl practice and all, these guys are competitors. A lot of them know each other. A lot of them played against each other in high school. That's the real story. When are you heading down to Miami?
Be the day after Christmas, so luckily I'll get a little bit of time to spend with the family. But get down there and have press conferences with Kirby, I believe, with both offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators and some of the players. Get ready for December 30th. As wild as it sounds, it'll be here before we know it.
I know.
Definitely exciting time for sure.
Yeah, and the people, next, obviously, in a 12-team playoff, it's almost crazy, but you would have had Alabama and Georgia and Missouri and Ole Miss this year. That's 4, and LSU was at 13 or 14 in the rankings. What I think is going to happen next year, if you've got that kind of a situation, teams at 13 and 14 with a couple of games left, like an LSU hanging out there, you could have 5 teams from the SEC. I don't know how they're going to stop it. You have to take the 6 highest ranked conference champions and then 6 at large. That's what Bill Hancock told us on the show. Then the SEC definitely flexed its muscle in recruiting. I like that. 12 of the top 24 schools in the country in the rankings are SEC schools. There's nowhere to – the lowest ranked school in the SEC, I believe, was Vanderbilt at number 39 in the country.
Definitely. It's sort of the name of the game, and that's what's so funny to me. When you look at teams selling the job they did in recruiting, when they say, hey, we got the 24, number 24 class in the country. If they're an SEC team, I immediately say, all right, where is that in the SEC? Because that's probably what, 8th or 9th. It's breakneck, and the coaches have to work super hard to get where they want to go with these programs. That's why, again, talking about Auburn, why it's so difficult for what they're trying to do. I do think they're trending in the right direction, just based off what they just signed. But,
yeah,
you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place between Alabama, who I think is going to win the championship this year, and then Georgia, what they've done these last 2 years. So it's definitely, following this conference, especially when it comes to recruiting and talent acquisition, it's nonstop. And as much as it is for us to cover it, I can't even imagine what it's like trying to put these classes together.
Yeah. And the NIL people, I mean, everybody running around with their hair on fire. And you got some of these kids 30, 45 minutes before they signed yesterday. I'm coming, and they go somewhere else. I mean, there's,
hey,
these
I'll say this too, Rob. I'm not going to say who it was. Somebody at Buford, as they were going, they did like a slideshow, and it had the slide, and it had a picture of the player, and then a logo on there of where they were going. Somebody before that started, they had to change the slide. I mean, that's how, they're talking about right before they're about to go. They're having to change where it is they're going. It is unreal.
Yeah, it is. Listen, I know you got a lot going on today. We really appreciate you. You work your tail off, and you and all the people you've worked with over the years got a ton of respect for you, and love you being on our show. Let people know how they can follow you and keep up with you, and hope you have a Merry Christmas and have a great time. And we'll be talking with you as you head down to Miami for that bowl. I really do think that game might be one of the best games, playoff or bowl, regardless, because there's too much testosterone going to be on that field, and those guys know each other. And Mike Norvell, you think he isn't going to be out to prove something, and you think Kirby isn't going to be out to prove something, then you don't know competition. But let them know how they can follow you.
Definitely. I'd really like to hear the conversation between Mike Norvell and Kirby before that game. But Dogs247, Dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at Dogs247. So still a lot of recruiting stuff. I've got probably 4 or 5 stories I'm cooking up this morning. A lot to talk about, and getting ready to. And again, at least for me, if we're not following Georgia into the playoff, nice consolation is going to Miami for a few days. But appreciate you guys always having me on. Enjoy it. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a happy holidays. Definitely going to be a very fun time for sure.
Oh, it is. It will. Thank you again. We'll be right back with more after this quick break with Gary Harris and Tuscaloosa on Sidelines.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Yeah, curve everything else. Win, 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 win. Win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
All right, Rob Browne here. We'll be joined by Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa in just a minute, checking in with what happened in Tuscaloosa. But want to say about the Vitamin Shop. They have the location Justin Ross has opened up just recently, South Haven, Mississippi, 5338 Goodman Road in South Haven, Mississippi, on the Mississippi side of Memphis. They're open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. You go to the Vitamin Shop for these reasons. They have nutritionists, health specialists. These people are actually trained. They're not going to look at you going, I don't know what I'm doing here. They know what they're doing. I shop there. I love that place. Get my shot blocks, my goo, probiotics and all. Work out. You got one body. You got one trip to the plate. Make it count. Shop at the Vitamin Shop, and they've got all kinds of specials going on right now at the Vitamin Shop. They'll also be opening up a second location in Oxford, Mississippi in early March. That is the Vitamin Shop. Also, look, this weekend, and it's Christmas is coming up Monday, okay? Charles Hall, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Yeah, I say that every time because that square is awesome. There's no square like it anywhere that I've ever seen. In Collierville, Tennessee, they have over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. They've got great clothes, largest collection of duck heads I've ever seen in my life. Pants, polos, button-downs, vests, jackets. Duckhead even now makes good-looking blazers. They're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. They've got Filson jackets, sweaters, button-downs, pants. Filson, they've got everything Filson has out there, or they'll get it for you, okay? They carry Barber, all the good-looking Barber jackets, sweaters, button-downs. They've got the full Barber collection. Great-looking women's clothes, dresses, pants, boots, hats, STS luggage, STS Western wear, Pendleton, Schaefer Outdoors, Old South, Rockmount shirts. I love these things. I got 6 of them. Here's the ones that Elvis wore on stage. Ronald Reagan wore them. Bob Dylan still wears them. Robert Plant wears them. Willie Nelson wears them. Rockmount shirts. They've got all these at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. They are open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and through Christmas, Sundays, 1 to 5 p.m. Charles Hall and his wife, Laura, are out there every day. Raven, the whole sales team. Charles has been working there 22 years. While you're out there on the square, there's a lot to do, a lot of great restaurants, get some great food when you're out there. But get to HewlettandDunn.com. They will ship anywhere. Just remember that. All right. I think a lot of people are still going, is there anybody else we can get? Yeah. You've got today and tomorrow for the early December signing period to lock in more kids. And then you can go in February, the first Wednesday in February. Guys like Ryan Williams out of Saraland, Alabama. They runner-up in the state championship, lost to Clay Chalkville on that great play made by D'Angelo Barber to game-saving tackle with the help of his teammates. But he's reclassified, so he's going to sign in February. He's committed to Alabama. His father played at Auburn for Tommy Tuberville. And Ryan was at Auburn over the weekend. And who knows? But he's committed to Alabama right now. But flips are always a possibility. We'll see what happens. He's got 5, says he's going to make 5 official visits between now and signing day. He cannot sign until the February signing. So not much is going to change, but a guy like Ryan Williams can make a seismic change in a recruiting class. We'll see what he does. Look at the recruiting rankings. I mean, good grief. Is it any surprise that Georgia is on top of the world right now? Well, they continue. Again, Kirby has not finished outside of the top 5 in, I don't think, since he's been at Georgia in the recruiting. And it's not luck. It's not luck at all. But you take a look here, and I'm going to run down, and these ratings are, I mean, they can be, they can be, they're very subjective. But you take a look at the SEC, like Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Auburn at 7 or 8, Oklahoma. So 5 of the top 10 are SEC schools, because you got to go ahead and I've been saying this for the last couple of years on the show. We've been doing a lot of coverage of Oklahoma and Texas, because we know once it was announced at Media Days, July of 21, that they're coming into the SEC, we're going to talk about them a lot. You better get ready for them. The way they played their football in the Big 12, they'll play different because they'll have different players. I don't think interior defensive linemen really wanted to go and play in the Big 12. Edge rushers, the best ones you could get, that's what you had to get. Okay. But I think the SEC is going to make Oklahoma and Texas change. They're definitely going to have to change the way that they are recruiting. And you watch Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not going to come in to this league unprepared like you think they are, but they're also going to have to overcome. I don't think there's any doubt they're going to have to overcome this. Losing all 5 starters on the offensive line. Dylan Gabriel, quarterback, has transferred to Oregon. Good grief. I think what Dylan Gabriel did was he exercised his free agency rights. I really do. I think he said, I think the players are getting feedback now from the NFL in ways they didn't in previous years. And they're finding out they're not going to be drafted very high, or, we're not going to draft you. You're not an NFL quarterback. And I think that's what happened with, I wish that Robbie Ashford would have stayed at Auburn. He could have been a hell of a slot receiver, a safety. Some NFL scout or agent should have said, you're not going to be an NFL quarterback, but you could be a first-day selection at this position, at something else. But he's in the portal. And a lot of these guys, they want it, and they want it now. It's like that, it's my money, and I want it now. But look at the rankings. Georgia 1, Bama 2, Miami, the U at number 3, Ohio State 4, Texas 5, Oregon 6. Gary Harris is with us right now, Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Oregon 6, Auburn 7, Oklahoma 8, Florida State 9, and Notre Dame 10. And there's LSU, an outlier at number 11. Gary, look, still got today and tomorrow, and then February to wrap up any loose ends. But let's get your thoughts on Alabama. Did they meet needs on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Well, bottom line, if you're recruiting
program under Nick Saban, that they know specifically what they want to do in recruiting and can recruit to it. It's not a situation where they're trying to catch up to people talent wise or anything like that. So I think when you're in the situation that Alabama's in, it is a little different philosophy than when you're taking over a program and you just got needs all over the place, man, and you're just trying to get as much talent in as you can. So I think it was a really good day. To be ranked second, not that these ratings mean that much anymore, because as I often say, a lot of these guys that you sign, you're going to be playing against them in a couple 3 years, some of them won't be in your program if you don't play against them. So it's very, very fluid, but still you want to sign good players. You want to try to, at a program like Alabama, you still want the majority of your football team to be guys that you signed and developed. And, you want to use the portal just to kind of, fill some needs rather than, we're seeing schools now that, and I'm not blaming them. I think for some schools, portal recruiting is the way to go. I mean, they're getting an opportunity to sign guys that they didn't get an opportunity to the first time around. And a lot of these schools now, the portal has been a game changer because, again, like I said, you can get guys into your program that maybe you never could have gotten in the past through traditional recruiting. But for Alabama, it was solid. I think it was a really, really solid day and a really good class, and just kind of keeps them on the level that they're at.
Well, offensive line, remember coming into the 21 season, that was hailed as the best offensive line class Alabama ever signed. And it took a while, and it took some guys coming in from different schools. But you're right. These guys you're signing now, you may be playing against them in 2 or 3 years. And you look at Georgia. I just had Jordan Hill on 24/7 Sports, who covers Georgia. They've got 5 former 5-stars in the portal leaving Georgia, 8 4-stars and 3 3s. If that were a recruiting class on its own, it'd be one of the top 2 or 3 in the country. That's just what's leaving Georgia. This is how crazy it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a different world, and at the end of the day, whatever you're doing through recruiting or roster management or the portal, you're trying to get in position to be one of these 4 teams that are left right now. You know, Michigan, Texas, Washington, and Alabama. That's what you're trying to do. Everything you're doing is geared to be one of the teams in the playoff, and next year 12 teams. So, you know, there's more opportunities, but that's what you're trying to do. And the way that you go about getting there is going to be different for different programs. And when you recruit like Georgia does, and you bring in as many high caliber players as they do at this point in time with the rules the way that they are, it's unrealistic to think that all those guys are going to stay in your program, Rob. That's just, you know, I see people, you know, taking all these shots at Georgia. What's going on in Athens? Well, nothing's going on other than they've got a backlog of talent. And a lot of these guys aren't going to want to wait. And in some cases, let's just say it for what it is. I mean, you've got really good players on your team. And there are other schools that would like to get those guys and are willing to have their, you know, NIL, if that's what it is, or whatever the, you know, however you go about doing it. Basically, you know, you those players have offers and opportunities to go somewhere else for more money than they're getting at their current school. That's just a fact. I mean, you know, you and I have been talking about this now for a couple of years. Anybody that, I'm not saying NIL, the concept is bad. I certainly think players should be compensated, but anybody that didn't see this NIL for what it was going to become was just very either narrow-minded or just naive, because this is what it was headed toward from the minute it was enacted. This is a pay-for-play situation. Yeah, that's what it is. And I see schools, I see fan bases on the internet taking shots at each other about, well, you know, we could have gotten that guy if we'd have been willing. Well, you know, that's the way it is. I mean, you know, no fan base is immune. When you sit there and say, well, we're not, oh yeah, you are. You are. At some level, your school is coming up with money to pay players. If they're a Power 5 school that's wanting to compete and try to get into the playoff or compete for a conference or national championship, somebody's paying somebody. That's just the world that we live in. And it's you know, it's like Dylan Raiola talking about Georgia. Mm-hmm. You know, when he got ready to flip to Nebraska and whatever the $2-3 million, whatever they're reporting, that there was no talk of, well, this company's stepping up and they want to endorse Dylan Raiola and have him, you know, be there. No, it was just, this is how much money you're going to get to come to Nebraska. And that's, you know, nobody even tries to hide it anymore as to this is tying into some endorsement deal with some local restaurant. NIL is a very small part of these players getting compensated, a very small part. I do think in some cases, yes, there are businesses that want a player to represent their brand. I know covering Alabama here, I can think of several that are legitimately, Rob, getting NIL money. In other words, they are tied into a company and they are promoting a company, whether it's a commercial or through appearances or things like that. But for the most part, in the recruiting process, all it is for a lot of these players and their families and their handlers is how much money can you pay me to go to your school, period. Not worried about what company I'm tied into. So it's a different world, and I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade. If you've got a highly rated class, you should be excited as a fan base, because again, more times than not, the top high school players become the top college players, and the top college players become the top, you know, professional players. Not always, but that's a general rule. So, but it's still at the end of the day, you know, you got to coach them, you got to sign them, you got to get them in here, and you got to retain some of them. And, you know, if you don't want to go that route, then you can go the route of Ole Miss, and you can just say, yeah, we're going to sign some high school guys, and they are, but you're also going to say, listen, we're going to work the portal. You know, we want guys that, you know, that have proven they can play at this level and they're available. And, you know, that's one advantage of a portal guy is, if you sign a guy that's in his third or fourth year, Rob, and he's been playing somewhere else, there's not any question as to whether or not he can play. You know, I mean, if he's already done it at the SEC level or the Power 5 level or even the Group of 5 level, you know what you're getting. So I'm kind of going around the world to say, yeah, Alabama had a good day. A lot of schools had a good day. But this national signing period isn't what it once was. You know, it's not a all, and it used to be a really solid barometer for where you were going to be with your program.
Yeah.
I mean, if you strung together 3 or 4 good recruiting classes in a row, you knew that probably you were going to have a really good chance to do something. That's not necessarily the case anymore. And because you didn't have a great national signing day doesn't mean that you won't win, because there's other ways to get those players in.
Well, we talked about it yesterday. Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, was on, and Dudley Dawson from hogville.net. Never has it been more easy to flip the narrative, nor has it been so scary that it can flip the other way. You can have a bunch of guys walk out. And then look at this. I'm just getting this on Twitter from some viewers. Ole Miss signee and #1 JUCO prospect Deion Smith pulled up to his signing ceremony on Wednesday in a Lamborghini. I mean, God bless. I in my wealth management practice, we have never in 32 years ever had a family with legitimate money, okay? Like that they, family business, ever do. That's the insanity right there. I wonder what that kid's majoring in. I
have no idea.
I mean, that I'm with you. That just makes you want to just punch a hole in the wall. But Gary, you're right. I think though the coaches, Nick Saban, let's say the NFL people come in from the 49ers and they want to talk about Gary Harris, linebacker from Alabama. They're going to go talk to Nick Saban and the position coaches. They still can sink you if you're if you're not going to be around there anyway in that program. If you're not a good guy, you have to. The coaches, I mean, this pulling up. You know what he should have done? You're going to spend $250,000. Invest that money, because when you're 25 or 30 and your career's over because you got hurt or something like that, how many of these freeloading parasites around you are going to be there to pick up the pieces?
But that's the case sometimes with
Yeah.
young men but you know what? Some of these young men, they don't have the support system, and they have an opportunity to get their hands on some money, and they want to do something with it. They want to have something to show for it. So that's going to happen in some cases. Hopefully in some other cases, people will take care of it. But, I thought about what Hugh Freeze says yesterday about, these people in this league are good. And, we had a guy tell us that he was coming and then he didn't come. And I got a pretty good idea who he was talking about, but
yeah. Gary, at the 30 minutes, 45 minutes before signing date, the guys that just, hey, I'm coming.
Situation, and I hope I didn't go out there, but you could have a situation where you've got a kid committed and the table could be set up and the ceremony could be there, and he could be about to walk in and sit down at the table, or maybe even at the table, and all somebody whispers in his ear, and you might lose him right there at the signing table. I mean, that's not beyond the realm of possibility, because for some of these young men and the people around them, it is about the money. It's all about the money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard yesterday there was one kid.
Traditional values and core values and elements of wanting to.
Yeah. Well, you would think that these kids would.
You there, Rob?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of freezing up a little bit, but I would think that these kids that, they do need, they've got to learn financial literacy. I mean, if you're getting a pile of money and you're going and spending $250 or $300 on a Lamborghini, I mean, the wealthy people that I know would never in a million years give their children money to go. The parents, the grandparents might have a stroke if they saw their money being spent like that. Gary,
I agree with you 100%. And you come from a wealth management background. You see it, but I mean, again, we're not talking about, everybody seeing things the way you and I see things. I mean, that's just, I'm not saying that you're not right, because you are right, But to think that everybody's going to subscribe to that way of thinking, there's a lot of people that get an opportunity, have not had money, and all of a sudden they got their hands on it, and they say, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to, they're not thinking about the long term. And if you're talking about a young man who's talented and is being recruited and is being offered money to play college football, he's not thinking I'm not going to play. He's thinking I'm definitely going to play in the NFL. This is just the start. Some of these kids, they don't see the money coming to an end. They're not looking at it like that. They're looking at it that there's going to be more down the road. So, you're going to have guys some are going to make, bad choices and bad decisions. And like you said, in 5 years, some of them are not going to have the money and they're not going to be playing the NFL. And then they're going to look back and wish they had done some things differently. But, it's their money and it's their opportunity. And some of them are going to do with it differently than we would do with it. So, this is just the world we live in. And now you're going to have a generation of young people that grow up not knowing any different. They're not going to know what it was like, back in the, the 90s or the 2000s, even the 2000 teens. All they're going to know is that college football and college basketball and college athletics is a pay for play endeavor. It's not about, and I've discussed this before again, and I don't know. I'm not trying to say that they're not going to class. I don't know, but you don't ever, remember back when Prop 48 and
yes,
a lot of the things that you sweated out were, man, we got this great commitment. Will he be eligible? Will he be able to get in school? Will he, will he have to go to junior college? Will he have to sit out? Now, I don't know the last time, maybe if you're in school and you just quit going to class, you might get ruled ineligible for a bowl game, but there's never any talk now whether the guy's academically eligible. He's been to 3 schools in 3 years. He leaves in the middle of a semester and he pops up at his new school and he's playing. I don't even know how they handle these academic resumes anymore, but it seems like no one's ever academically ineligible anymore. And you would think the way that some of these players jump around and go from school to school, and that somewhere along the line there would be some school that would say, hey, you don't have the academic standing to be eligible here. But you never hear about that anymore either. So let's just say it for what it is, man. This is a entertainment for fans. It's television, and it's these players are putting their talents on display, and all of the traditional college values are there if they want to pursue them. If you want to pursue a degree and get a degree and stay in school, you can do it. But if you want to just play ball, it seems like that's available to you too. And I think at some point, we continue to talk about what can we do to tweak the system. We are going to have to look at just some kind of straight payment plan across the board, and make these guys employees and girls too, just make them employees and just have an entirely different set of rules and standards for student athletes as opposed to the regular student body, because we kind of already do anyway.
Yeah, well, you're right about it. You never hear about the clearinghouse anymore, or somebody being 5 hours short, whatever like that. Of course, you go back to 1996 when Jones, the basketball player at Mississippi State, took 36 hours during summer school. That happens all the time, and was no problem. But I'm with you. And I think, who knows, that guy may have rented that Lamborghini, because I would hope he's got some people around him. It looked like his parents were there at the signing, but that kind of stuff just make your head explode, because, my kids, they work hard, and man, they save their money. They're good with it. I am impressed with the young kids. And our oldest one graduated from Alabama. She's one of the smartest bankers. Mallory is off the charts, And so, I think about you.
Hey, Rob.
Every time I go through Anniston. Yeah, go ahead. You there?
Well, I just see a question there on the board.
I wanted to get to that one
left here about what concerns you most about Michigan. Let me go ahead and take that one from on the field standpoint, because again, we're still entertained by the games and they still mean a lot. A lot concerns me about Michigan. Number one, just their experience. This is their 3rd year in a row in a playoff. They've been building toward this moment. They had a lot of guys come back this year to get to this point. They're 13 win, and I don't know why I'm dropping out, but they know how to win, and they're solid in all the three phases. And teams that are the hardest to beat are the teams that don't have a glaring weakness. And Michigan doesn't. They're solid on the offensive line. They're solid at running back. They're solid at quarterback. They're solid on the defensive front. They're solid in the secondary. They've got depth. Kicking game is good. Well coached. Know how to win. And like I said, just a lot of experienced, mature football players. So they're not going to beat themselves is what I'm saying. And, I've covered Alabama now for a long time, and I've seen a lot of games where Alabama over the course of 60 minutes, they just wear you down. And ultimately, a lot of teams just can't stand up to it. And they make mistakes and beat themselves. I don't see Michigan doing that. I see Alabama's going to have to make plays. Alabama's going to have to go out where it's close. Over 60 minutes, I think Michigan will have as good a chance to win it as Alabama does. And that's a testament to Michigan. They're a really good team. And anyway, I don't know what happened, but I gotta go now, Rob. I don't know how much we got.
Yeah. No, Gary, look, it worked out well. That's Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa, WVUA TV channel 23. And Gary, we'll get you back on next week as we get closer toward game time with Michigan, because there is a lot to talk about as always. We're going to do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break here in just a moment and come back. We got the AD angle in hour number 2. But I want to say, Gary's right. Michigan will be a hell of a test, but I still think Alabama wins the game. You got too much depth, too much speed, and they got a quarterback that is going to drive Michigan crazy. And Alabama, again, there's not been a 3-year period since Nick Saban arrived in Tuscaloosa where the Tide has not won a national championship. They won back-to-back in 11 and 12, going for the three-peat in 13, got knocked off by Auburn, but that's going to be a hell of a game against Michigan. Jim Harbaugh is a hell of a coach. There are forces out there. I've never seen anything like it. I think Ohio State's behind it. I think Ryan Day's behind it, because the only team in the Big Ten that can beat Ohio State is Michigan. They've done it 3 years in a row. Michigan has won their 43rd, 44th, and 45th Big Ten titles. But prior to that, these last 3 years, Michigan had not won the Big Ten since 2004. And Ohio State had won 15 of the 16 matchups. You think college football isn't cyclical? You don't know anything about the history of college football. It's all about cycles. And it's hard to maintain greatness, I promise you. Alabama, 1997 to 2007, that 11-year period, including Nick Saban's first year. They had 8 of those 11 years where they lost 5 games or more. They lost to Hawaii. They lost to Louisiana Monroe. They lost to some schools. You're like, what? Nick Saban comes in, doubles down after that first year. I need support. I've got to go get the best players in America. That's what they do. And you're seeing right now, even with NIL, Alabama, number 2, Georgia, number 1. I think what have we learned? What are we learning about the way college football recruiting used to be and the way it is right now? Well, it's always been about dealing with the recruits and the people around them. You're not just getting a decision from a 17 or 18-year-old kid. They've got handlers. They've got people around them. And I don't know if that Deion Smith with Ole Miss pulling up in a Lamborghini, I don't know. If I'm a member of a collective and I'm giving my money, hard-earned money, to that collective, I'd be a lot happier if that kid said, I took the $250,000 or $500,000 and invested it in the stock market or in a managed portfolio, or I put it away, or our family attorney put it into an age-banded trust or an incentive-based trust. I'm telling you, NIL collectives, you're going to get a lot more. And I think these kids, they all want to flash. Like Ben Troop says, and I know this, wealthy people, They don't buy stuff that you can see necessarily. They buy farmland or real estate. It's not real flashy always, but they buy stocks and bonds, ETFs, managed accounts. They're smart. Most of my wealthy clients, and I started this business 32 years ago, had a lot of these older women, especially if they were widows, they couldn't sleep at night unless they had $200,000 or $300,000 in their checking account. And they would be clipping coupons going to the store. It's a difference. You can make a living with your hands. You make millions with your mind. Get your education. Be right back after this quick commercial break. Hour number 2, sidelines. Right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here for hour number 2. A lot to talk about. National Signing Date, man. It is, I would love to see one of these kids, and John Hartwell, I'm going to bring him in here. He's getting ready on his set down there in Monroe, Louisiana, and I'm going to bring him in here right now. John, wouldn't you love to see one of these kids show up? I was talking about the video that's out there, and it's showing, it's showing it's video of Deion Smith, #1 junior college recruit, pulls up in a Lamborghini to sign with Ole Miss. Wouldn't you love it if he pulled up with his financial advisor or his CPA, like you or Howard Sprague or whoever, and says, I'm this money, I'm blessed to have this, but it's there for the long term. I'm 18 years old. I can live on $800 a month, plus I'm on scholarship anyway. Wouldn't you just love to see a student athlete do that? Because if he spent $250,000 or $300,000 on a Lamborghini, if he paid cash for it, I mean, if I'm his parents, my head's exploding. I mean, again, I can tell you, I've been doing this financial advisor wealth management practice since May of 91. That's never happened. I have never in my life. The wealthiest people I know, not one of them drives a Lamborghini. None of them do. In fact, a lot of them drive old vehicles. My dad was talking about one of his friends in his lunch group that they ate with. He was a World War II Marine aviator, and fought in South Pacific. And his plane, he crashed on the carrier at the end of the war. He was so tired, he dozed off. Spent 2 years rehabilitating himself. Came back. When he died, probably was worth $100 million. Drove an old station wagon, to lunch. Those old wood panel ones. He loved that. That kept him grounded. That's all I'm saying is that if where everybody's all caught up in all this flash crap, man, financial literacy, and that's why John Hartwell, you and Matt both, and John, with your background in public accounting, I would be like just saying, guys, let me just talk to you. Let me just show you what you can do with this. So when you're 25, 30, 35, 40 years old, it's still there. But, look, the games are going to go on. It's the sideshow that drives me a little bit crazy, John.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Rob. I was And again, whether that's an NIL deal, whatever it may be, I just I don't think that sets a good precedent. It was, if you want to contrast that, and we can talk more about this later. Our signing day with the coaching staff that's 10 days in, depending on what recruiting service you look at. If you look at Rivals, we ended up 5th in the Sun Belt Conference.
With how many? 2 weeks to do that? That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, 2 weeks from the day that Bryant Vincent is named. So, it's wow. Those guys, our guys got after it. We were tied with JMU and Texas State for 5th in our league with the number of points. And, depending on speaking of numbers, depending on what recruiting service you look at and who's got somebody ranked 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, what have you. But, I was talking to our coaching staff and one of our donors yesterday at breakfast, and he said, hey, I would, and the donor said, hey, I'd love to go get mechanic shirts done up for all of our recruits, because this is a rebuild. This is a process. We are, and it's going to be about guys who don't mind getting dirt and grease under their fingernails and getting after it. And I do think over the long run, kind of that mentality is going to serve you better than who's about all the pomp and circumstance. Because I promise you, if things get tough, I'd rather be going to war with the tough guys than with the glitz and glamour guys.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, Matt, I just, if a kid pulled up in a Lamborghini, I would just, pull up in an F-150 or something from Red River Ford Toyota, or a Toyota, Tundra STS. But God, just put the money away. How many people walk up to strangers and ask them how much money do they make? That's why I'm saying this NIL thing, it's going to correct itself, people. I'm getting all these texts from people saying, you see, that's proof that the game, it's gone to split. No, it hasn't. This is temporary. Matt Dean, one of the wise men in Oregon, finished number 6 in those recruiting rankings. And I'm sure NIL got some players and stuff like that. But you know what? If after a few days, people are going to talk about that. We're going to be right back talking about practices for the bowls and the games, aren't we?
Hey, great to be back on, guys. Hey, John knows this better than anyone. There are multiple ways to do this thing, okay? I'm a fan of a program that has traditionally taken 2 or 3 stars and developed kids into NFL talent. So if you have the right coaching staff, which looks like John's on the right track with his recent hire, congrats, John.
Yeah, thanks.
It's not an instant gratification process. It's a rebuild, like he said, and it takes development time, off seasons in the weight room, getting the right person, not necessarily the right 5 or 4-star quarterback, the right person to run your system at quarterback. Because if you have the right quarterback that is a leader in the building, I'll give you a great example. Oregon, everyone thought Bo Nix was done. Didn't work out at his legacy school with his father, and his leadership in the building is remarkable. I saw a video the other day. First of all, Bo Nix, Heisman finalist, is playing in the bowl game. Okay, that's a leadership model right there that permeates to the rest of that football team. They got multiple guys doing that. Bucky Irvin, who has nothing to gain. Bucky declared for the NFL draft after the season. He's going to play in the bowl game. Okay, so they're out there doing. They did a run in honor of Coach Greg Knapp the other day, who tragically lost his life last year, I think, in a bike riding accident. And one of the things I heard that Coach Knapp used to do is he used to run the stadium stairs every day. So Bo and his leaders in that team were running the stairs at Oregon in honor of fallen Coach Knapp because he got hit by a distracted driver. So there's a lot of message. When you have a building full of 100+ student athletes, you have a remarkable opportunity to lead young men in a positive direction. And that's what's happening in a lot of places in our country. But we get consumed by 1 or 2 articles about, Arch made $3.2 million because as a backup last year. Well, who gives a shit? Good for him.
Yeah.
That's what I say. You know, I'm more into the stories about a young coach getting an opportunity to take over a group of men and lead them to success. Like John said, they were not far away from really good opponents this year at finishing those games. Maybe 2 years from now, John, you guys are at the top of the league. Maybe sooner. You just never know once you get the right person in that chair.
Yeah, and I think that's part of, you know, the head coaching job that sometimes, you know, people who are not integrally involved in the game don't understand. Being a college head coach, especially in a high profile sport, whether it's football, men's or women's basketball, baseball, you are much more today like maybe an NBA coach. It's not necessarily, especially from the head coach's role, it's not so much about the X's and O's. It's about building and managing a culture. It's about managing personalities. It's about managing guys with different pay rates. No different than professional sports, because you know, like you said, you've got an Arch Manning who made $3.2 million this past year in NIL. Well, I promise you got starting O-linemen there at Texas, and I'm sure they all have NIL deals, but some of those guys may be getting, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month, a drop in the bucket compared. So I think that's really important. Hey, one of the things, guys, and I had this conversation with an offensive coordinator just yesterday of a team going to a bowl game, and he and I are really good friends, and just had this conversation. But we were talking about guys opting out of playing in bowl games, and I do think one of the things that we've got to figure out, those of us in college space and involved with NIL, is somehow the money that is made off of these bowl games, many of which are ESPN properties, and ESPN is, you know, making money off of the does the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery make what the Rose Bowl does? No, absolutely not. But it does do one key thing. It fills airspace during the holidays. And I promise you, there are people all over the world tuning in to watch that Camellia Bowl just because it's college football on.
Yeah.
And I think sooner than later, we are going to have a mechanism where NIL money that's generated from bowl revenues is going to have to go to every player on that roster to be able to provide some type of incentive for those kids to play in bowl games. Do I agree with that philosophically? No, because I think the bowls do a tremendous job of creating an experience for these young men and the staffs and the families of the coaching staff and the administration of the school. They do an unbelievable job with that, and they provide experiences and gifts and everything else. But in today's world of NIL, I fully believe that we're going to have to come up, or the entity, all of us involved in college football are going to have to come up with a mechanism to distribute some NIL money to those student athletes participating in bowl games.
Yeah. Well, you look at what's going to really be fun to watch is at a school like Auburn, or, I don't know, when you got 25, 30,000 students, you might have 1.5% of your student body are student athletes. So what's going to happen when the pre-med or the pre-law major or the accounting major wants to start practicing accounting or practice medicine or practice law, and they're 18 or 19 years old, and they say, well, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that you cannot infringe on an individual's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, earning a living. What's going to happen with that? Wait until we get students who claim, well, my picture was on the front of the Birmingham News at the Iron Bowl. I want my check. Well, I'm telling you, do you think we're not going there? We will. But that's why I say the free market will work it out. And I'm with John. You think about this. You got a locker room in college with a guy driving a Lamborghini. Good God, the thought of it just sickens me. And it's not jealousy. It's just I don't know anyone that owns a Lamborghini. I know some people that have money. I promise you, they don't buy crap like that. I like what Ben Troop said. He goes, and he's right. In the NFL, there were guys that bought things you could see. Clothes, cars, houses, just, flash. Wealthy people, they don't typically buy things that you can see. It's invested. Matt, you and both of y'all are very smart. If we're going to have a commissioner, I want both of y'all to be there because you've got business acumen and you're smart. And these, if you're 20 years old, junior college transfer, and you come into $1 million NIL deal, you'd be surprised how fast you can spend that million, Matt. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, and you've got friends. Remember when Elvis died? The income tax rate was 73%. I think his estate netted $2.7 million. He had third cousins twice removed showing up. Oh, we's real tight. Look what I mean. That's Matt. Jump in here. I'm the coffee's starting to kick in.
I love John's concept. I think some kind of bonus structure for playing in a bowl game or your last game. If you go 5-7 and don't go to a bowl, that would be different. But like if maybe there's a chunk of that NIL money, John. I don't know the legalities of this that can be associated with almost like a bonus structure that you get that last payment predicated on you completing or being available for that game. Maybe you didn't play in it, but you were available for that game. But guys, I think we're nitpicking a little bit here, Rob, because in any locker room, okay, and I've coached for a long time, you're going to have certain kids that are driving a Toyota Camry and some are driving a Land Rover. I mean, that exists.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, my concern with that as a coach is to make sure it's not a problem. So whoever the leaders of my team
exactly
are talking to individuals, say, hey, man, don't flaunt it. Okay. We're all in this together. We need to have respect for all of our teammates. And I promise you, on the better teams, I promise you that's not a problem in Nick Saban's locker room. I'll tell you that much right now. I mean, the better coaches just do this at a level where there's so much inclusivity that you don't have those things that exist. And then I promise you there's certain locker rooms where those things happen. And it's the reason why teams lose 3 or 4 games. Just being honest.
And you're right. And I'll tell you, I remember in high school, I got a car for Christmas my junior year. And God, I got all kind of grief about that. Oh, you get that because of your grades? And I'm like, but right. No, let me tell you, you know what you do? You playing small to make other people around you feel less uncomfortable is a disservice. If you're the best runner on the team or the best shot in the duck blind, don't purposely miss just to make other people not feel like they aren't as good as you. You know what? Raise the bar. I'm with you. And both of y'all, I guarantee you, Matt Dean, I know Matt and John's 6'7". You walk in that locker room, you're going to get people's attention. And you're right. You got some people in high school, you got it.
Oh, yeah.
The family has a lot of money. Everybody knows all that stuff. But you know what? All that stuff goes out the window with good parenting. It says, you know what? That we have money. You don't have any. We have what we give you, but we love you so much. We're going to teach you to go out and earn it yourself. That's what we're going to have. The market's going to adjust. The free market will come in. But I do wish we had both of y'all teaching financial literacy to these guys. I guess it's that I see how hard it is for people to make money. And most of my clients are first-generation wealth. 95% of wealth in America is first generation. Yeah. Just, ground them. John, you've got this coach you got. I want to talk about this guy, Bryant Vincent. He got the 5th best class in recruiting after a rough cycle at ULM. One thing I heard about you from my friends in Birmingham when I first was introduced to you was you're a hard ass. You're going to come in and you're going to run it like the Citadel. I mean, in that term of, either you produce, if you, in my world, if we hire money managers to manage money and they quarter after quarter after, we don't give them that long, they're gone. And that's what I see with you. You got 17 teams. people think it's hard being a football or a basketball coach. Now that I've had both of y'all on this show the last few years, the AD angle, being an AD, you're wearing 17 hats. Matt would wear 21 or 24. It's a lot harder than people realize.
Well, I can't take credit for being the original one to say this, but I used to have people ask me on a pretty regular basis, "Hey, John, why'd you go into athletic administration? Why'd you decide to be an AD, go that track as opposed to being a coach at the collegiate level?" And my answer is, hey, as an athletic director, your livelihood only indirectly depends on 18 to 22-year-olds. As a coach, your livelihood is directly tied to 18 to 22-year-olds. But the point you make is great there, Rob. And you talk about financial literacy, which is very, very important. But I think just basic management skills are really important too. And, everybody wants to say, "Oh, well, everybody's not equal in the locker room." Well, we're not. The good Lord doesn't give us all the same talents or the same deficiencies. Everybody's different, and you got to play to your strengths. And that's no different whether you're a college football or a college volleyball player than if you're in the game of life. I mean, if you're a CEO of, whatever corporation you want to say, you're going to have people in the financial realm. You're going to have a CFO, and you're going to have an accounts payable processor. They're not going to make the same money. But they're all vital parts of the team. And the job of the CEO is to make sure that all of those units are running efficiently to, produce the best outcome possible for that company. It's no different than being a coach. It's just on a different realm. But I will have to say, as you made reference to the Citadel there, Rob, and I know Matt saw this the other day probably, but the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame in South Bend go down by 20 to the Citadel Bulldogs the other night. So Coach Ed Conroy, who was a teammate of mine at the Citadel, big day for Citadel hoops, going to South Bend and getting the win.
Wait, now again, I asked you this before. We all know the name Pat Conroy, the great writer who wrote a great book about the Citadel and Lords of Discipline. No, Lords of Discipline.
Yeah. Great Santini, My Losing Season. Yep, all of those.
Is that he's related to him, correct?
Yeah. So Ed is his first cousin.
Wow.
Let's see right here. I'm in my home office today. So there you go, right there. The great Santini is one of those. I've got My Losing Season was about him being there coaching. I've got them all. Unfortunately, Pat Conroy passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
But the treasures in my library are those signed books by Pat Conroy, and actually the great Santini was about his dad, and he used to come to our games on a regular basis.
Let me say this: when I go in somebody's house, there are two places a lot of people are going to look. A lot superficial people will look at their garage to see what kind of vehicles they drive. I look at their library, and I can tell right there you're a fan of great books and reading. My 88-year-old mother reads at least 2 books a week. 95-year-old dad does 3 or 4 word search puzzles a day and works out every day. But that reading books like that, and by the way, Robert Duvall and the great Santini, that guy's he's an unbelievable actor, but that is so cool. Matt, the Citadel going on the road and beating Notre Dame by 20 in South Bend, isn't basketball a great sport? I mean, there's so much good stuff happening in sports right now. I agree with Theodore. I wonder if that's Brother Theodore in Atlanta from the Letterman show. David, I must tell you, it's just crazy. But life happens, and we got this. Matt, kind of put people at ease. There's so many people texting me right now. Sports are this and that. Man, we have been here before. Calm us down, Matt.
Well, first thing, John, I want to let you know, Ed Conroy is from my hometown of Davenport, Iowa. He played at Davenport Assumption. I was a Davenport Central guy. He was a Catholic boy. He was a year ahead of me, so I didn't play against him. A hell of a high school player. I know he had a great college career, but Ed Conroy could ball, man. I mean, he could flat. I mean, back in his day, man, Ed could ball. And when he was at Tulane, they came over to our facility and practice. So I reintroduced himself. You know, we had some cement full courts out in the public. I've played pickup against him before. And, you know, Ed's really one of the most knowledgeable guys out there, you know, that probably hasn't – you know, if you put Ed at a Power 5 with all the resources, I think you could see a guy that could make a deep run. But, you know, sometimes our paths, John, you know, it's kind of like your question here, Rob. You know, sometimes I'm going to give you a story that's a really heartwarming story from yesterday. So I travel to Nashville, Tennessee. They're hosting this Division III women's tournament at Welch College all day from teams across the country, right?
Yeah.
My goddaughter plays at Central College in Pella, Iowa. So I'm there with my best friend, and we're watching the game. Well, they're playing Gallaudet out of D.C., the all-deaf school. And I'm watching this coach from Gallaudet, and I may have pronounced it wrong. And none of the, you know, they're doing sign language and everything. And John, I got to tell you, I wrote her name down. I went to her bio. She played at Cincinnati, 06 grad. She was with Brenda Freeze for a year at Maryland. She's been there 10 years. Heck, she's basically, they were 6-6, and their roster was somewhat, you know, they probably had 9 or 10 kids on the roster. Played as hard as any team I've seen. And I'm like, there's someone that just gets it because she's staying there, obviously, because she makes an impact on those kids' lives.
Yeah.
And just had a lot of respect. They lost by 30. I know my buddy went and talked to her after the game, and I'm going to send her a note because I think what it goes back to Ed Conroy. You know, people get lost in like the high end of our situation, the Lamborghinis from student athletes, right?
Yeah.
But that's not really what John and I deal with. I mean, we deal with the nuts and bolts. We're ecstatic when our soccer team wins a game in overtime or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
In soccer, hell, I'm ecstatic we score a goal. But I mean, you know, honestly, it's just it's a way of life. You go in this because you want to be impactful to student athletes in their lives and help them for the betterment of their future. It's truly, yes, it's about winning because winning keeps our jobs. There's no question about that. But at the end of the day, I am much more rewarded when I can help write a letter of recommendation for someone to law school, med school, you name it, because that's what I'm really here for as a coach for all these years.
Yeah, and I can tell you this, some of the most miserable and unhappy people that you'll ever meet are people that inherit wealth and never work.
Yeah.
They're horrible people to be around. A lot of them just alcoholic, they're deadbeats. And you love to see people who are working their way up. And as an athletic director, I mean, parents and y'all listening and watching, you know, when you volunteered to coach one of your kids' teams, you have to take the politics out of it. And you cannot pick your starting five based on who spent the night with your son or daughter the night before. Doesn't work like that. Stay out of politics, stay in production. Great advice I was given years ago. John, this Bryant Vincent guy, there's 14 schools in the Sun Belt. They get some damn good. You know me, I love football on all levels. When I get you on here, Ben Troop, whoever, Matt, we talked about football all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think so I'm looking at a deep discount value stock that's trending up. That's ULM football. If you're pulling that off with 2 weeks to do it, where's Bryant Vincent from?
Yeah, so he was born in Western Kentucky, in Glasgow, Kentucky, but he went to school at West Alabama. His wife is from the booming metropolis of Sweetwater, Alabama. You've been there before, Rob?
Is that in the Black Belt near Gainesville?
It's over on the east side, right off the Tom Bigby River, right next to Nanafly. You heard of Nanafly, Alabama, and Sweetwater, but his wife is from there.
Yeah,
but he came through the ranks of high school coach. He was an assistant. He was the offensive coordinator at Charles Henderson High School in Troy, Alabama.
Yeah.
For about 3 years, he worked his way through the high school ranks. He was the head coach at Greenville High School One year he was at Spanish Fort High School.
Okay.
When he took over at Spanish Fort High School right there across the bay from Mobile, for those of you out there that are not familiar with LA geography, but he prior to him taking over, they had lost 17 games in a row. His first year, I think they won 8 games, and it just kept climbing from there. His fourth year there, they won the 5A state championship in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
So then he was at he's been the offensive coordinator at both South Alabama and UAB. When UAB reinstated football, Bill Clark brought him on as the offensive coordinator. And in the 22 season, he was the interim head coach. Bill Clark stepped down in the summer of 22.
The back surgery. Yeah.
And Bryant was named the interim head coach. All he did was take them to 7-5 and a berth in the I think they played in the Bahamas Bowl that year. Then they did a search. He was a candidate. A lot of people thought he was going to get the job. They decided to go with a little more sexy hire in Trent Dilfer, and I believe they went 4-8 this year. So when he didn't get that job, he took the job as the offensive coordinator at the University of New Mexico this past year, knowing that it was somewhat of a gamble because they weren't very good, but they went from 118th in the country to 48th in the country in 1 year in total offense. He is an unbelievable offensive mind, has a very much a roll up your sleeves, go to work, blue collar work ethic, has assembled a tremendous staff, and they've come in here and just not even batted an eye and won recruiting battles. We signed a quarterback out of Jacksonville, Alabama, Joe Ogle, who had been committed to Troy for almost a year. His dad had been the offensive coordinator at Jacksonville State before, actually worked under David Cutcliffe at Tennessee when Cutcliffe was the OC there.
Yeah.
But we flipped several players, quite a few JUCOs, but again, in today's world of JUCOs and transfers, you can get well pretty quickly in recruiting.
Yeah. And guys, we talked about it yesterday. Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, made a great quote. I love it. He said, I've never seen it where things can turn so quickly on the upside and also on the downside because of the portal. And you can go get players. So, look what's coming out of Georgia. Can you imagine being a school that got all 16 of the players leaving Georgia? Now, they may be leaving for any number of reasons, but of the 16 players that are leaving Georgia that have entered the portal, 5 of them are 5 stars. They were coming out of high school. 8 of them are 4 stars. 3 of them are 3 stars. Now, they may go to other schools and demand a king's ransom, and people say, no, not today. But there's guys coming and going. I just wanted to hear that background on Bryant Vincent because, building up Spanish Fort, and that, you've got Saraland down there. There's so much talent in the Mobile area. But it's going to be fun to watch. New Mexico they go up 70 spots in the offensive rankings, from 118 to 48. Do the Gazendas, 70. Okay. That's impressive in 1 year. Matt, what he did going out there and finding a coach like this, that's one of the hardest things you can do is do a coaching search. All right, let me say this real quick about, again, one of our sponsors, ECS House Industries, located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. They make the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. They also make all the aerators for the catfish farms. So you like eating catfish and you like eating, they make the best farm equipment, technology, implements in the world in a 99,000 square foot warehouse in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, located right between Wynn and Jonesboro. Chad House, gotta love a guy like this. He's got close to 60 employees. Last week, he's out on social media saying, this is my favorite day of the year. I get to write Christmas and the year-end bonus checks to my employees. They actually invest in their people. And if you invest in your people and you back them, you work them hard, they'll give you 110%. I always believe that. But proud to have ECS House Industries as a sponsor of Sidelines. Chad's a great guy. He was a Sigma Nu at Rhodes College, and he's a tip of the spear in Cross County with the Chamber of Commerce, bringing in businesses and everything like that. He backs everything that happens in Cross County. He and Judge Blake and Sheriff West, great people over there. All right, let's get back. You know, if you look at it, both of y'all, I'm going to start with you, Matt, building a program, and fans are so cynical because they've got so much information coming at them. But look what John did and going out and finding Bryant Vincent. What a resume. I mean, he's been coaching in all the right places. Hell, there's 150 Division I players a year coming out of Alabama, John. And Matt, Auburn and Alabama this year signed 22 of them in state. That leaves 128 kids for everybody else. What you heard him say about Bryant Vincent? No, like you got Duncan, your guy out of Ohio. I mean, y'all know how to find a coach. I think that's I like to hear more about like what you think about his coach and the selection process. They went for the sexy hire with Trent Dilfer, and he goes 4-8, and Bryant Vincent is I think that's a hell of a hire.
Well, John, I'm jealous. As an Iowa Hawkeye fan, if we'd have had the 48th best offense in the country this year, we may be in the college football playoff. Our defense is that good.
Yeah.
And hearing John, it's not like we've given him all day for this question. You could tell the research he did when he gave the biographical information. He's done his homework. He's got the right guy. All I needed to hear was 118-48. And the fact of the matter is, you know, one of the biggest things you have to do in a football hire, for us, when I hired Coach Rich Duncan from Berry College, and Rich was a former head coach at Aurora and took him to the National College Football Playoffs, but Rich had been a successful OC 5 years in a row. They won the league. Well, we were coming off of a defensive-minded head coach, a former coordinator. So a lot of times I think it's good if you're having a kind of like a down spell, right? If things are not going well and you have a defensive guy, my philosophy is I'm going to find me an offensive person because I want to see if we can change the narrative, right? Because two things. One, probably the offense needs an injection of adrenaline, but secondly, we probably have some defensive guys that are pretty good on that roster because we had a defensive-minded head coach. So now I need an offensive guy to flip the script a little bit, okay? I think the key to being successful as a head coach in football, though, is whatever your forte is, okay? And when you hire a high school coach, you got to understand, too, not that a guy that had a high school background. What I mean by that is he's done both sides of the ball at some point in his career and probably special teams as well. So he's got a plethora of people he trusts to bring in his network to be coordinators. So there's a good chance, I'm guessing, because of his offensive acumen, he's going to be heavily involved in an offensive room. However, the key to the success is, can he get that defensive person that resonates in the building and helps him establish that culture? And I think he will. That's just my guess. Great hire, John.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Hey, I'd be remiss if I didn't throw this tidbit out to you too, Matt. Two of our signees, an offensive lineman and a defensive back, both are from Des Moines, Iowa. Southeast Polk High School, and both played at Iowa Central Community College as well.
John, so Southeast Polk is the same high school where Caden Proctor, the five-star offensive lineman, plays for Alabama, who flipped from Iowa in the last second. I'm sure there was a Lamborghini there, Rob. And then
I'm thinking an F-250.
And a teammate of his was Xavier Nwanka, who plays for the Iowa, the starting safety as a sophomore. So the reason I say that, John, is Southeast Polk in Iowa is one of the best football factories, unknown obviously known to your guy, but it's really talented football players on that roster. So congrats.
Yeah. And Rob, and I won't bore our, listeners with all of this, but I'll just go down about 10 guys, and I'm not going to name the guys. I'm going to name the hometown. And this just tells you, that Coach Vincent and his staff, Jacksonville, Alabama, Des Moines, Iowa, Jackson, Mississippi, Madison, Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi, Philadelphia, Mississippi, Statesboro, Georgia, Fairhope, Alabama, Lake Providence, Louisiana, Mobile, Macon, Mississippi, West Monroe, Huntington Beach, California. So Valley, Alabama, Loxley, Alabama, Centerville, Mississippi. So,
look, you're going to the places where the players are. I mean, I remember when Gene Chizik left Iowa State and came to Auburn, I counted the number of Division I players in Iowa and the surrounding states, and it was 147. Okay, then he comes to Auburn, and I counted the state of Alabama and the states right next to where Auburn is. It was close to 800 Division I players coming out. So you can go get players. University of Memphis has always recruited the state of Alabama really hard, and you can't get everybody. I mean, everybody knows this. Usi Umanyura from Auburn High School did not play a down for the Auburn Tigers, but he had a hell of a career at Troy. DeMarcus Ware played at Auburn High School, didn't play a down for the Auburn Tigers, but had a great career at Troy, the Cowboys, Broncos. He's now in the NFL Hall of Fame. Guys that are 6'3", 188 pounds, like DeMarcus was as a senior, nobody projected him to be what he became. I mean, I'd love to get Bryant Vincent on here and talk to him. He sounds to me like he really knows. He knows where the players are. I mean, and to me, when you work your way up the rankings from high school, and then you go to UAB, Troy, whatever, and as you keep rising, then you become a head coach. You've had to work extra hard to go get those players. You're recruiting the same schools that, say, a Power 5 school is recruiting, but you're not getting the players necessarily, but you know where the players are, and you may get that number 2 or 3 guy that has a lot more upside. We all know in the swimming world, swimming moms and dads call them 15 and under wonders. And all of a sudden they get that driver's license at age 16, and they don't really care about swimming as much as you did. I think this is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, well, and I think another thing is having had, 10 plus years as a high school coach, his relationship with high school coaches is really, really important. And, one of the things that struck me as I was going through the interview process with him, relationships are really, really important to him. And he talks about, you develop relationships with everybody, especially in the crazy world of athletics, because it's so incestual. Your paths cross so many times that it's really important. And those relationships, even in 2 short weeks, have really paid off, both recruiting student athletes and in recruiting on his staff too. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's everything in life is relationships, and if you're sitting there staring at your phone as a kid in a room full of adults that are not, take a hint. They didn't get where they are by being stupid. All right, Wilson in Memphis. Who will win the national championship in college football? You got Michigan and Alabama, Texas and Washington. I'm going to start with a game nobody's talking about is Washington and Texas. And by the way, Zach Arnett gone after 1 year. I called it coaching malpractice early on. With Will Rogers has transferred from Mississippi State. He's from Rankin, Mississippi. He's going to Washington now to play for Kalen DeBoer. That's going to be a fun one to watch. But start with you, John. The Huskies, they're undefeated. 8 of their last 9 victories, single-digit wins. That pulls a team close. And they've got 26 players on the roster who are 5th and 6th year seniors. Give me a break. I mean, I still think Texas gets the win.
Wow. See, I have, and obviously, Matt has got inside knowledge as it relates to the Pac-12. I have been a little bit skeptical, other than Oregon. And Oregon obviously not there, but I thought they were the better team, the better talent. But you got to give Washington the credit, defeating them twice. I would not count out Washington in this game. I'm going to go with the Huskies in this game, and I'll tell you the other game. And I know some of the listeners out there who have some orange and blue allegiance may not like to hear this, but man, I know Michigan is talented, but I'm gonna go an Alabama-Washington national championship game. I love him, hate him, whatever. You're a foolish if you bet against Nick Saban in a big game.
Yeah, yeah, and you got to take your blinders off. I mean, they've not gone more than 3 years since he's been at Alabama without bringing home that big trophy, Matt Dean.
Once again, John's 100% correct. Now, here's the thing. John, I felt too, I was a little biased, but Oregon was very talented. If you go and look at the two games that Oregon played Washington, Oregon's 2 losses here, they're both by a field goal. Oregon actually, in many ways, played better on the road and led that game late in the fourth quarter, and there was a 4th and 3 at midfield. Maybe right now we'd like to punt the ball if we had it over again. We didn't get the first down. They come down touchdown, and the Ducks miss a field goal to send the game in overtime. Rob, that stat you said, I had heard it was 29 5th and 6th year dudes for Washington. When Washington played Oregon, this was an incredible stat that I didn't know until after the game. Oregon has the 4th youngest roster in college football, I heard. And Washington has, I would guess, of the final 4 teams left, probably the oldest roster, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things about Texas, hey, they've had a wonderful year. They may win the football game. But let's also take a deeper dive into Texas. You're telling me they blew a big lead at home against Kansas State? Kansas State, instead of sending that game in the second overtime with a sure field goal, they go for it on 4th and goal at the 4. They don't get it. They struggled at Iowa State, even though Iowa State had beaten them 3 of the last 4 games, all right? And they've had some big wins. First of all, Oklahoma State, didn't they get blown out by South Alabama? I mean, in the Big 12 championship game, they beat Oklahoma State, but I thought South Alabama boat raced them, John.
33-6 in Stillwater.
So what does that tell me about the Big 12? If Oklahoma State is the top 2 team, no disrespect, South Alabama, a really good football team, but come on, right? So I'm going to go with Washington. Now, I will tell you, from a matchup perspective, Texas has 2 monsters on the defensive line. So Dylan Johnson was able to run the football against the Ducks in the second game because Jordan Birch, the Ducks SEC transfer at D-line from South Carolina, got hurt in the first quarter, okay? So if Texas can neutralize the run and make them pass heavy, now I will tell you, they have 3 dudes that will play in the NFL at wideout, Washington does. And Michael Penix is a great college quarterback. In the NFL, if he gets shipped somewhere with no offensive line, it's not going to work out. But right now, their left tackle, all I know is he's number 55. He's a pro prospect, probably a first. Washington protects him. And you talk about the close games. That actually helps them. They're not worried that they're in a close game. And then here's the thing. And some people call me, because I'm an Iowa fan, and I have hate towards Michigan and Ohio State. I don't. Iowa's beaten those programs numerous times. But if you watch Michigan football, they have a great offensive line, and they run the ball really well with Blake Corum. But you know what Alabama has? They got some cats in that box. They're going to stop the run. They're not worried about their physicality. So if J.J. McCarthy can beat Alabama, they'll win. I don't think he will. And I think Milroe is such a hard guy to prepare for. And if you give Saban a month, I like his chances.
Yeah, I do too. I think what intrigues me about Texas is Bo Davis, the defensive line coach. Alabama has not been the same on the defensive line since Bo Davis left. Yeah. He is the secret sauce for Texas. And again, that's true. Oklahoma beat them in the Red River Shootout 31-27. Oklahoma's pretty good. I think Oklahoma won 10 games this year.
Oklahoma's good. I give them that.
They're good, but it is a weird conference. Oklahoma State wins the last version for now of Bedlam 27-24, and then the next week goes down to the bounce house to play Gus and gets beat 49-3 or 49-7 by Central Florida. I don't know. The Big 12, they score a lot of points. It's a crazy league, but I would say Alabama, again, because Milroe puts a lot of stress on a defense. And week in and week out, how many times was Michigan tested with the kind of speed Alabama has, not just at the skill positions on offense, but on the defense? I'll take Kevin Steele and that alpha male culture that he brings to the locker room. I'll take them over Michigan. That's not going to be a blowout. I like Harbaugh. He's weird. He tucks his sweatshirts in. He wears white socks. That's a good look, though. And he wears the birth control glasses. I mean, but there's some people out there trying to get rid of that guy, like Ryan Day. You know, Ryan Day picking a fight after school on the corner with an octogenarian, Lou Holtz. I mean, good God. Just because he questioned your team. I mean, but you know what? That's what makes it so much fun, guys. Is these
Hey,
Ryan
Rob,
Day trying to get rid of Harbaugh.
Hey, I'll add in there. I know we talked about some of the skill at Washington, but we'd be remiss in this conversation if we didn't talk about the job that Kalen DeBoer has done.
That's right.
And when you look at him, talk about coming through the ranks and what he's done. You know, was the head coach at Sioux Falls, Fresno, Washington. He bring a lot of people, you know, the knock sometimes on Pac-12 teams. Oh, they're not tough. They're not physical. Well, I can tell you the way that Kalen DeBoer, raised in South Dakota, came up through Sioux Falls, his coaching path.
Okay.
He's a tough dude, and that toughness permeates to his team. A lot of people don't realize this. I think a Washington-Alabama national championship game is going to be so intriguing if that happens. Kalen DeBoer's overall record as a head coach, 103-11. He's won 10 out of every 11 games he's played. Dude's he's under. I know he's been given a couple of Coach of the Year awards and well deserving, but I still think he is underappreciated for how good of a coach he really is.
Yeah, I mean, he came from Indiana, and that's how Penix came with it. And Michael Penix Jr. is from Tampa. See, where Florida? You think Florida couldn't have used him as quarterback? I mean, they're good players everywhere. And if you don't have a coach and a bunch of assistants that know how to find players and evaluate them, I mean, it's no different than money managers finding the portfolios you'll see sometimes called fallen angels. You know, those are your well-known companies that are way down in value. You think they're not coming back? I think this is a great this 4-team playoff, and we know obviously Florida State's not in there and Georgia's not in there. Next year, man, with this 12-team playoff, it's November. It's going to be it's going to be the best it's ever been, guys. So every team in that top 25 will be saying there's a chance we can get to the college football playoffs. Do y'all agree with me? Next year, we're going to see at least one 9-3 team in the 12-team playoff due to strength of schedule alone.
You know, John, I don't know what you think. I think that's a possibility, but I think if you look at this year's model, that wouldn't have happened, would it? I mean, we'd have had some 10-2s obviously in there, but I don't think – you think LSU at 9-3 this year would have got in? I don't.
I don't either. I think you're going to have enough teams out there, and I also think, you know, you're going to be guaranteed of having at least one group of 5 team in there, and you know,
yes.
Whether that, you know, next year, whether that's a Tulane, whether that's a Sun Belt team, whether it's you know, a Boise, whoever it may be. I mean, that's going to add to the excitement of it, and I think you know, 12 teams. I think the timing is perfect. I think the controversy of this year's, you know, snub, if you will, of Florida State and leading into 12 teams next year, I don't think that could have been scripted any better. Hey, the other thing I was going to throw out there to just get you guys perspective on this, I just saw a notice this morning. I believe that the Florida State Board of Trustees is meeting again tomorrow. The topic once again is about are they going to bid adios to the ACC? Here's the thing. I mean, and again, you hate to say everything comes down to dollars and cents. This is a huge financial decision for them because not only forfeiting their broadcast rights, all of the ACC teams signed a grant of rights through, I think it's 2036. So, I mean, I don't care how strong your bank account is or the institution's bank account or their donors are. That's a heck of a long time to go without broadcast rights money. And I don't, I know Greg Sankey is a very astute business person as well, as in addition to being an attorney. I just don't see the SEC standing there with open arms to welcome Florida State right now. So if they vote tomorrow to leave the SEC, boy,
ACC.
I mean the ACC.
Yeah.
I think that's jumping off into the deep end with limited swimming skills and without a life jacket.
Absolutely agree. Florida State's had multiple opportunities to join the SEC, and they turned them down. And Matt, you don't sell a stock unless you got a better one to buy, unless you're only going to be in cash for a couple of days, because cash ain't much of a living.
Yeah, I was going to use the analogy: you never leave a job till you have a job, right? Same premise, a little bit here in a weird way.
Yeah.
Where are they going to go? Because, like you said, Rob, and I mean, it's not like there's an open invite right now, to my knowledge. I mean, I think Greg Sankey's really happy with their dynamic with the Oklahoma and Texas edition. You got schedule made out for a while. I listen. If we'd have had 12 this year, they'd be in, and we wouldn't even be talking about this. They in my mind, probably should have been in regardless. Okay, because the reality is the only reason they played a third string quarterback in that game was because their number 2 was in concussion protocol, right?
Yeah.
And the number 2 did an adequate job that should have got him in the National College Football Playoff, in my opinion. They were never going to be, because they had an elite defense. I mean, their defense was very good.
Incredible.
Unfortunate, but let's not forget that when the decision was made, there were some conference commissioners that took a stand against 12 right away, and I think the ACC was one of them. So, unfortunately, that came back to bite them, not having the 12-team playoff this year.
Yeah, and again, how about the milkman in Memphis? I drove a 64 Valiant in high school. The bench seats came in handy at the Southwest Twin Drive-In down in Whitehaven. See, that's a practical guy. I know this guy. Very successful business owner, supporter of the show, listens every day. He's on the Stairmaster at the fitness club right now, watching the show. To the milkman, David Aquadro, great man. But there you go, little. How about it? I'd love to see one of these kids pull up to the press conference on a bike, on a mountain bike. Hey, I'll tell you one thing. Y'all know the player I'm talking about, Kawhi Leonard for San Antonio. My son Wilson, who is in mergers and acquisition and banking, finance degree from Auburn. I tried to get him to do accounting, John, but he switched to finance, but he took a bunch of accounting classes. And he sent me this thing about Leonard signed a $97 million contract with the Spurs, and he still drove a 20-year-old Tahoe. I love people like that, man. I mean, just in $97 million, he could buy him a dealership probably, So I love it. But look, we run out of time, guys. This has been awesome conversation. It's Bryant Vincent, man. This is the guy you want coming in with the relationship builder. You're going to have fun with this. This is great, and it's he got to pull off the 5th best class in one of the best conferences, Power 5, Group of 5. It doesn't matter. They always are. That is a brutal league. That's impressive as hell. Both of y'all, man, Merry Christmas. And just remember, guys, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We all are blessed. You may think you got it bad. You don't know what you're talking about. Talk to somebody who's been to Fallujah and not as a tourist. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. And John, let people know how they can follow you, and Matt, do the same. Then we'll sign out and be out of here for the day.
Yeah, guys, and Merry Christmas to y'all and your families too. We are all blessed to live in this great country, and with all the blessings we have. One of my big blessings is considering both of you good friends and being able to share at least an hour a week with y'all. You can follow everything with Warhawk Athletics at ulmwarhawks.com. John_Hartwell is my Twitter. Hey, and I'll just give you this, since we've been talking about cars since the beginning of the hour.
It's the car hour.
And I keep having this conversation with my 14-year-old daughter, who's already picked out what she's going to be driving. I said, hey, Lauren, here's the deal. Your dad, my first car I didn't get till my junior year in college at the Citadel, which, by the way, and I wish I still had this car, was a 78 Datsun 280Z. And everybody says, wow, how the heck, you're 6'7". How? I'm like, man, the front seat had plenty of leg room. The back seat had zero, but the front seat had leg room. But you know what? If you go without a car till you're 20, 21 years old, life can turn out all right anyway. So I'm spot on with you, Rob. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for people saying, oh, I got to have this or that.
Hey, yeah, my son totaled his vehicle, and I let him have one of mine when I got another one, and he smashed that one. And I said, figure it out, dude. You got 2 legs. You'll figure it out. You got to keep that out in front of him. That's just, hey, a car does not define the man or the woman. Matt Dean, close us out. I love it.
Well, listen, guys, quickly. My high school car was a 74 Plymouth Duster that I was proud to drive. And let me tell you what, I don't think there's any of those out there anywhere right now. Man. But you can follow me at Dino Hoops 44 on X, and then roadslinks.com. You can follow all the Rhodes sports teams. But Merry Christmas to both you guys. I'm blessed to have a chance every week to get a chance to hoop this up, man. It's really one of the best parts of my day and my week. And John, good luck with the rest of the hoop season as we get into spring sports. I know you're probably busy over the holidays. Try to enjoy whatever time you get with your family, because I'm sure there's a tournament. Or we were fortunate. Our teams are going to Vegas this year, guys. So I had the option to go in there or stay in here. So I am staying here and going to pull for my Oregon Ducks in the Fiesta Bowl.
That will be fun. Yeah, but look, now I totally agree that next week we're going to be going full court basketball press. So just get ready for it, because we got so much basketball and stuff going on. Again, great show, everybody. Take care. We are out of here, and we will see you tomorrow.